Is Mike Norvell the long-term answer for the Florida State Seminoles?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your first order. The big question overall, now that Florida State is 0-3 after losing to Memphis 20-12, is Mike Norvell the long-term answer for the Florida State Seminoles? I am shocked that I'm having this podcast. I'm shocked even after they started 0-1. After 0-2, I thought there was a chance this might happen at some point, but the way they played on Saturday, it was definitely going to be my pod today. As I mentioned yesterday during the live stream, etc. Going to talk Norvell, going to talk DJ, going to talk stats, etc. I think that his tenure is in serious jeopardy. Not necessarily this year. We'll get into some of that today. And at 4 o'clock Eastern time, I have another live show to give fans a chance to learn more about the offense. It's worse than I even thought, by the way, after doing some preliminary research. That'll be slightly touched on in this pod. But again, first thought before hearing any of the stats, any of the background that I've looked up, or anything that you know about Norvell, what is your gut feeling as a Florida State fan? Is Mike Norvell the quote-unquote long-term answer in Tallahassee? Well, to help dive into that, today's show is going to go through his background, when Florida State hired him, some of the coaching maneuvers he's been through, his style, some of the guys that he's been under, why they're in this position, and I have a few questions at the end that I'm saving that, quite honestly, I'm not sure anybody can answer factually, but they're really important to at least begin to look into. So let's go into Norvell and his history to help figure this out piece by piece. Okay, he's from the Dallas area. He went to Grace Prep. He's a very small guy. He played at a Division II school after going to Louisiana Tech for a year, ends up at Central Arkansas. He's one of their all-time leading receivers, 213 receptions, 2,611 yards, 12.3 and 15 scores, and 1 rushing touchdown. He was a pretty successful Division II player. He goes on to be a GA at the school, and then he goes over to Tulsa, works under Malzahn, and then he goes and, has a pretty good career there, 2007, 2010. But then he gets his first big break. Power 5 football with Graham, guy that's been in and out of football. 2011 Pitt. Then they go to Arizona State 1 year later. It was pretty quick exit. I'd rather live in Phoenix than I would Pittsburgh too. But he was the co-offense coordinator and receiver 5 years out of college. That's pretty impressive. Norvell did a nice job there. 2012 to 2015, he was with the Arizona State Sun Devils, offense coordinator / quarterback coach, and eventually the assistant head coach. Todd Graham's program. That's impressive. Again, young guy. So he's 30. He's a coordinator. He's, they had some big wins. They beat Notre Dame 1 year. They were a team that could compete with anybody, USC, etc. They were pretty good. He gets his next big break. 2016, Mike Norvell becomes the Memphis Tigers head coach. He was there 4 years, 2016, 17, 18, and 19. Now, this is where it's really kind of interesting because they didn't really have a great team every year, but they did improve. They didn't have the talent necessary to do some of the things they needed to defensively. You can scheme offense. Defense, it's more about dudes. There's certain parts of it that are scheme, but he did have some interesting quarterbacks. So a very mobile guy that he had in 2016 and 17 that just fit what Norvell had done was already there. Riley Ferguson. 2016, he goes 280 of 443, 63.2%, 3,698 yards, 8.3 per attempt, 32 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. This is a guy that's mobile. Could extend plays, not quite Jordan Travis, but he could extend plays. He could run pretty well, get outside the pocket, create a lot of havoc for defenses, putting stress on them, whether he's going to go over the line of scrimmage and take off. get 10 yards, or he's going to pass it. He could throw across his body. He was all those things, kind of like Jordan Travis. So there's a fit there. Remember this for the rest of the pod. Very, very important. 2017, Ferguson is back with the Memphis Tigers. Very, very similar stats. 299 or 299 474, 63.1%. So literally almost identical from the year before. But he upped his totals in key areas, yards and touchdowns. 4,257 yards. So he went up about 600. 9.0 yards per attempt, almost a full yard higher. 38 touchdowns, 9 picks. He went up 6 touchdowns, 1 pick down. So he improved. Part of that's got to be given to Norvell and his staff. Again, mobile quarterback, can make plays, can do a lot of different things. But again, this is a fit for Norvell because at Pittsburgh and Arizona State or the Graham, that is what they did. So there you go. It's established, if you will. Norvell is going to coach mobile quarterbacks. Well, let's go back for a second. When he was at Arizona State, they also had a guy that was really good named Brady White as far as talent. He was a kid from the greater LA area. He was more of a pocket guy, but he transferred to be at Memphis, and he ended up being the guy in 2019. And he had negative yards rushing. This is a good sign as a historical note for a coach. If you've coached and done well with a pocket guy and a mobile guy, you're a pretty well-rounded coach. Here are Brady's numbers in 2019. 269, a 420, 64%, 4,014 yards, 33 touchdowns, 11 picks. 2019, they went 12-2. They had a really successful season. And Memphis, quite honestly, was kind of a media darling. Norvell's name was circulating. Obviously, Florida State was in need of a new coach. He'd coached in the South. He'd recruited in the South. He's from Texas, so that's a nice extension. Florida State's always recruited Texas a little bit. There was some interesting overlap between what he had done, what Florida State had done. Like Charlie Ward, ironically, he's kind of the inventor, if you will, as a quarterback of the fast break offense. Some of the guys he'd had, namely Ferguson, and some of the guys at Arizona State, they could move. All this seemed to fit. But there's still more. Again, Norvell played receiver. He'd coach. That was his first position to coach. He'd also developed a really good receiver. Anthony Miller had a nice 3-4 year career in the NFL for Memphis, going back to those teams in 16 and 17. So he's good, not with just quarterbacks, he's good receivers. It's proven. Here are the numbers. Like Miller killed it in 2016 and 17. He was elite. In 16, 95 catches, 1,434 yards, 15.1 per reception, 14 scores. The next year, 96 receptions, 1,462, 15.2, and 18 scores. NFL player, second round pick. Not the biggest guy, 5'11", 190, but he made it to the NFL. First year with the Bears, he scored 7 touchdowns. He got beat up quite a bit and only lasted about 5 years in the league, but he got his time in, got his pension, made a bunch of money. Miller's a pretty happy guy, I imagine. Mike Norvell helped him get there along with his staff. Give everybody credit. So you can see why Florida State was interested. A lot of the similarities from his history are there. But is Mike Norvell the guy to lead Florida State long term? We're going to talk about that question and what it means for each person and define that kind of easygoing phrase in a much more complex way because it means something different to a lot of people. And here's the big part. It's about national championships. Can the Norvell-led Noles win a title? That's going to be next here at Locked On Seminoles. Have you tried 5-Hour Energy lately? This is your opportunity to get something at a checkout line because it's so convenient to you to get your day going. 5-Hour Energy shots give you the feeling of alertness that you need to get in the zone. No sugar. It's convenient. You can get it at grocery stores. You can get it at a gas station, a convenience store, and you can order it online. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. 5-Hour Energy's website has all kinds of flavors, whatever you're into. Watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more flavors for everyone. Try them all. On the site, you can even build your own 12 or 24 pack. You choose the flavors, and it is delivered right to your door. If you are going to go with this, try it out online. Go to 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5hourenergy.com and get some 5-Hour Energy product today. You can use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This order is only valid until the 30th of September on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. So what is the expectation for Florida State football? Let's just make sure it's clear here. It's to compete for the national title, be relevant every year, and honestly, at least once a decade, you should win a title. I think that's a safe barometer. And for some fans, most fans aren't realistic. I get that. Fan is short for fanatic. They need to win it like once every 5 years. Not realistic, but a lot of fans are going to think that. Based on the way things were going in 22 and then 23, you could see that path opening up. Is Mike Norvell the guy to lead Florida State to a title? Well, 0-3 to start 2024 is not very helpful, but we've already established he's offensive minded. He's got Southern roots. He's also got Texas roots. He's coached pocket quarterbacks with success. He's coached mobile quarterbacks with success. So what is it that has caused Florida State so much trouble? I'm going to do a live show today around 4 o'clock to discuss the offense ad nauseum. But I want to give a little snippet before we get to that podcast. And here's the key. For whatever reason, and I'm not saying you can't do it at the Power 5 level, I think it's harder to do it, Power 4 as actually, at the Power 4 level to run a drop back quarterback because the competition is immensely more difficult. The room for error on passing, etc., is more difficult. And then to combat it, I was listening to Bud Elliott and the Nolecast earlier today. It's just a good reminder. I was just kind of doing something while I was listening to it in the background. He mentioned like both tackles are out, got young guys there. Obviously, the receivers, you got drops. They had 3 in the first half. I checked Pro Football Focus under DJ Uyunglele, and it only listed 3. But, I mean, there were a couple other balls that were, at least close. Florida State's receivers and tight ends and running backs aren't helping him. It goes both ways. DJ's obviously not the most accurate young man in the world. But all of these things together, you would think with an offensive-minded coach with his experience, the guys that he's worked with, he could at least be manageable. Why the precipitous fall? DJ's a 5th-year senior. He's not great, but this is as bad as he's ever looked, including his freshman year. That's the point. If you want to say he shouldn't have taken a pro-style quarterback, we're on the same page because he's better with the mobile guy, 100%. But he does have factual data. Just for the record here, 2019 Brady White, 269 to 420, 64%, 4,014 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 11 picks. They were very good. They went 12-2. That guy was not running anywhere. Backwards, maybe. He was not a runner. Why is Florida State not just poor as a pocket passing team, but atrocious? Atrocious. For fun. Just for fun. I'm going to look this up right now. National statistics. There are 134 teams. I want you all to guess that are listening to this podcast before I announce the statistic. Just passing. Out of 134 teams, what do you think Florida State ranks as of right now in passing offense? Most people, I think, will be, quote unquote, not surprised at this total, but it was actually slightly higher than I thought. This is going to be for yardage. What do you think? Right now, Florida State is 74th in the nation at 222 a game. Let's look at a little bit more specific. Touchdown passes. What do you think Florida State ranks in touchdown passes right now? This is comical. Florida State is 128th out of 134 teams. I mean, come on, man. That's ridiculous. Florida State right now has a grand total of 1 touchdown pass. I mean, I don't even know how to define that. So DJU going, I put this up on the screen for those of you on YouTube here. I'll share my screen. It's really concerning because DJ, again, they had 3 drops in the first half. If you're going to do something to help the guy. There were too many plays that were just brutal. Like Keziah's drop it was a well-designed play. That drop is one of the biggest plays of the game that he might have scored. He's a heck of an athlete, but he failed. He didn't get it done. These are the numbers for 3 games for DJ. For those of you looking, and I'll read these stats off for those of you listening on CastBox and Odyssey and all the other places. But DJ in his first 3 games, I'll just give the combined totals, and then we'll go into the game against Memphis. Combined, his offensive grade, just everything he does, 75.5. It's solid. It's solid. But at the same time, I don't really understand that because he doesn't have a 75.5 for any of the 3 games, but whatever. His passing overall is 75.3, running 61.4, and fumbles 74%. He's pretty good with ball security. Big time throws, according to Pro Football Focus. He had 0 against Tech, 3 against Boston College, and just 1 versus Memphis. That's not exactly where you want to be. But here's the worst stat of them all. And again, they got both tackles. They got serious problems up front. Sack avoidance is a very important statistic. And it's one of the things that, again, mobile quarterbacks, they might run themselves into a couple more sacks because they can run around, but they'll probably also take off for some big plays. Jordan Travis was both, but his ability to make plays compared to getting sacked is obviously about 10-1. So sack avoidance, when there was pressure as graded by PFF, 1 out of 5 times he got sacked, not just hit or had to throw it away, sacked. That is atrocious. Like 10% is kind of high. 20? Oh boy. And he was at 10% in game 1, 11.8% in game 2. So again, I asked the question specifically to DJ Uiagalelei. How does a guy that's a 5th-year senior that played at Clemson, obviously a very structured program, and then 1 year with Jonathan Smith, who's now the head coach at Michigan State. He was the quarterback way back in the day for the Oregon State Beavers. Very good, by the way. 2000, they were really good team. But with Chad Johnson and a bunch of those guys. How do you have that guy as your coach, plus Sweeney, and now Norvell, and all of a sudden you're the worst example of yourself in your career? I get the drops. I get the offensive line's not very good. But, like, he's not close on stuff. There are things that just don't look right. Guys wide open, they're showing things on the screen on ESPN, and I'm watching the game, and I'm like, what are we doing here? It is mind-blowing. So part of what I'm saying about Norvell, whether or not he's the guy, and everything starts at quarterback, is still on DJ. Like, it's crazy. There's no way you're going to tell me that Norvell is all of this or anybody on his staff. Part of this is flat out on DJ. But these numbers are insane. By the way, the drop percentage, this is so bad. The drop percentage, according to Pro Football Focus, is 15.8%. Holy moly, that's incredibly bad. I can't really put it into perspective for you how embarrassing these numbers are. But again, DJ is your quarterback. You picked him. You've coached pro-style quarterback before with the white kid, big-time recruit out of L.A., went to Arizona State, followed you over to Memphis, waited his turn, plays. What's the deal? What's the deal? Why is it now that you can't do this? It's crazy. So, big picture question once again. Is Mike Norvell the guy to lead Florida State to be a nationally prominent program consistently? Is probably the best way. I should have said that at the outset. He's already had him in the relevant conversation, but that was last year. It's like, this is the biggest drop-off that I remember anybody having in recent memory. I mean, like, there's been a few others. 2009, Texas is in the national title game. 2010, they go 5-7. They lost their quarterback. And Mac didn't do a very good job of recruiting. Okay, they missed. Fair enough. 2015, Notre Dame was barely on the edge of the national title conversation, but they were at least close. 2016, they went 4-8. Brian Kelly almost got fired. Obviously, he resurrected his career. Now he's at LSU. But those are a couple. There are a few others in the realm. But this Florida State team might be worse than the 2016 Notre Dame team. That's saying something. That team stunk. This team might be worse than any of the Florida State teams in the last 7 years or so. Like 19, 20, 21. This team might be worse than any of them. You can make any, I don't care which one you want to pick for whatever reason or how you felt about it. Pick whatever year you want. It's not relevant. This is a bad team. Will they win 4 games? When will they win a game? Those are things we're going to talk about next. And to finish off the show, a very clear question that's going to be broadcasted again, maybe a couple sub points here to it, and some general questions for the fans that I want answers to. They're complex to a certain degree, but we need to figure this out. Like, because Norvell's contract, I believe, is 2031. That's next at Locked On Seminoles. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through the 22nd of September, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with your YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. Is Mike Norvell the guy to lead Florida State long-term? To be in the prominent position of a top 10 team competing for the playoff, competing for national titles? Again, it looked like it last year and kind of looked that way towards the back end of 2022. Things have shifted in a 180-degree direction. And I think the quarterback play is interesting, and that's why I brought up all the stats. White, obviously, Jordan Travis. I don't have to go over Jordan Travis's career. He's tremendous at Florida State. Florida State fans know it. Riley Ferguson was tremendous for Memphis. He coached Anthony Miller, a second-round pick as a receiver. All the things you would think that would fit, and it's not there. So here are a couple of the key unfortunate stats. I touched on it just a moment ago, right before the break. Norvell's contract is massive. It's give or take $10 million a year. Florida State is in the middle of renovations. Florida State is in the middle of a humongous lawsuit against the Atlantic Coast Conference / ESPN, however you want to define it. I consider it both personally, but whatever. When could they, quote unquote, buy him out? If things go south again next year, I don't think he'll get fired this year, but if things go south again early next year, could Florida State fire him? I say yes. They could, but it's predicated, and this is what I was talking about, a sub point. This is the ugly truth of college football and college athletics. There's no shortcut. Money talks. Who's paying it? Straight up, is there a specific one-person answer to that? Certain schools have that, and I mean literally one person. To my knowledge, Florida State doesn't, and if somebody wants to comment on it, fire away. I'd love to hear it. But I don't think Florida State does. And his contract, again, is a long way down the road. If he's got it structured the way I think, I'm sure there's a buyout number and all that. I'm not going to get into that just yet. Need to see another game or two before I get into that conversation too much, but it's big. They don't need another 50, 60, 70 million dollars out the window, even if it was 30, if there was a low buyout or something. That's a lot of money. And then there's the other really key question. If Florida State does get rid of Norvell, okay, who are you going to hire? You're right back in that same position that a lot of schools are. By the way, by the time this is posted, Billy Napier might be fired. I've heard things about him. The Gators are trying to get out in front of it this year. Good for them. I think they should. He stinks. But they're not exactly in the most prosperous position either. There aren't, just timing is everything. There aren't a lot of guys out there you're like, okay, well, this guy can fit. This guy can fit. He's done this, blah, blah, blah. He's recruited in the South. Name the guy that is all of the following, not one or two of these points. And I mean literally every single one of them. Prior FBS head coaching experience. Norvell did not have it. Prior FBS coaching experience with elite success as a recruiter. Not good, elite success. Like he's had top 10 classes. Got to do that to win at Florida State. It's something I talked about yesterday morning before the Florida State game against Memphis. They're not recruiting well enough consistently. The 20 and 21 class is completely washed out by the most part. There are only a handful of guys that are really good. That's why this is struggling. You miss on the portal guys, that happened. So need proven success as an FBS coach and an elite recruiter. Must be a guy that is willing to work with the media, especially in today's era. That is huge. Sound bites, how you communicate. Like Norvell's good with that stuff. That's great. But you need somebody in that personality trait. The old school Nick Saban guys that fans don't like that very much. It's just true. And I can tell you personally, media doesn't, myself included. If you ask a question, you want an answer. Being berated and stuff, those kind of guys, it's not going to work in today's society. Number 4 is another big one. Based on your history, how well are you going to be able to assimilate a coaching staff that can help you have those top 10 classes, that can help you prepare? I think that's one of the reasons that Florida State is struggling. And that's why I bring up this final point. I was looking just at his records and stuff in Memphis and in Florida State. Obviously, last year, Florida State's 13-1. The year before that, they lost the 3 games in the middle of the year. It's kind of a weird streak. But then they caught fire again at the end, finished 10-3. That's 23 wins in 2 years. 23-4 is pretty good, okay? But digging a little deeper, this is the final point before I get out of here. Norvell has not had a lot of success against the better teams, meaning ranked opponents. And I know that's a little subjective, but take it for what it's worth. So 2016, 17, 18, and 19, those are the 4 years at Memphis. 1-1 in 16, 0-2 in 2017, 0-2 in 2018. In 2019, they lost to Penn State in the bowl game. They beat a couple basic teams during the season in the league, etc. But they didn't beat any FBS teams while he was there that were Power 5. Like, he didn't have that experience, which is a red flag to me. He gets to Florida State. 2020, they went 1-3. They actually won a game in that scenario. 0-4 in 21. 1-1 in 2022. And then this past year, 3-1, Georgia being the one loss. So he doesn't have much experience with that. He's only won a few games, like 8 games against ranked opponents in his career. It's harder than you think. Like Joe Paterno's record against AP coaches or AP teams is atrocious. Penn State, especially in the 70s, late 60s, didn't play anybody. Their schedule was really light. But it's amazing how porous it is. And that gives me pause. And it's something I actually, by accident, this is a great coincidence. Does Florida State have the right staff? That's a bigger podcast. That's like a 3-hour podcast. But I'm not going that route. The point again, is Norvell the right guy to lead? Well, to answer that, you need to understand that he's not done a great job in big games historically. Doesn't have a ton of history as a head coach. Did rise quickly. Had some success with some of the guys he was with. But does he have the right staff? That's kind of my last question. And I don't know the answer to that, but I had said yesterday, and I'm steadfast with it, especially now that I've seen the game, because I did that podcast prior to, that he needed to fire 1 or 2 guys minimum after this season. And I'm steadfast. I want to mention that constantly from this point forward on Locked On Seminoles. Fire, fire, fire. They must fire some of these guys. They need some new blood for recruiting purposes. And obviously, for some reason, and I still don't completely understand it, because of his success with Brady White at Memphis. He's a pocket guy. But yet DJ is having his worst season as a collegiate, as a 5th-year senior. There's something wrong with their staff somewhere along there. And I know they had some bad injury situations too. I don't know what it is. I don't know which coaches need to go. It may not be the bad. It may just be the chemistry. Maybe they just need new guys. I don't know. They have to change the staff, though, at minimum after this season, because it's right now, I think 4 wins is about as good as it's going to get. And they catch fire. Anything's possible. But my gosh, this team is so dreadful on offense. And thank God the defense is better, but so bad on offense. Why would you pick them to win games? Why? In a few weeks, they play Clemson. I forget which exact week, but they got Cal coming up. I've seen Fernando Mendoza live this year against Auburn. He hit 20 of his first 22 passes. Good luck. There's not any easy wins coming up here. It's going to get harder than it was against Memphis. Who are they going to beat? Who is Florida State going to beat in the near future? That's something we're going to talk about again this afternoon on Locked On Seminoles. That show is at 4 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a live show. Going to discuss whether or not Florida State has any chance to honestly make a bowl game. I highly doubt it. Can they get to 4? More likely. We're going to talk about those things. So once again, thank you for joining in to watch Locked On Seminoles, making it your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football. Hit that notification bell, hit that like button, subscribe, rate and review this podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you all stopping in. Make sure you go check out Spencer McLaughlin with Locked On College Football. There's a lot going on with the changes at the top of college football that Georgia almost lost yesterday, etc. Check that out next. Also, my guys at Locked On ACC. Got a lot of stuff going on there because the ACC is just buck wild. So I will talk to you again later today. Everybody have a good one until then.